I want to start in the book of Ecclesiastes 2. Solomon writes, I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure. Enjoy yourself. But behold, this also was vanity. I said of laughter, it is mad, and of pleasure, what use is it? I searched with my heart how to cheer my body with wine, my heart still guiding me with wisdom, and how to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was good for the children of man to do under heaven during the few days of their life. I made great works. I built houses and planted vineyards for myself. I made myself gardens and parks and planted in them all kinds of fruit trees. I made myself pools from which to water the forest of the growing trees. I bought male and female slaves. I had slaves who were born in my house. I had also great possessions of herds and flocks, more than any who had been before me in Jerusalem. I also gathered for myself silver and gold and treasure of kings and provinces. I got singers, both men and women, many concubines, the delights of the sons of men. So I became great and surpassed all who were before me in Jerusalem. Also, my wisdom remained with me. And whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure, for my heart found pleasure in all my toil, and this was my reward for all my toil. Then I considered all that my hands had done, and the toil I had expended in doing it, and behold, all was vanity and a striving after wind, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun. Ecclesiastes chapter 1, of course, starts with the monotony of the earth. The sun rises, the sun sets, and tomorrow the sun rises and the sun will set. Everything that has been done has already been done. We just continue walking forward in the monotony of day after day after day. And he said, in the midst of those days and under that sun, I applied myself to know wisdom. I had wisdom. I applied myself to know pleasure. I wanted to know what was pleasurable. When we look at the world and people who go by every day, people we meet at work, people we meet at home, maybe even ourselves, there is a desire for pleasure. Who was it that sang the old song, everybody's working for what? The weekend. Why? What's happening on the weekend? Well, we get away from the drudgery of day-to-day life of working, and we finally get to embrace the pleasure of the weekend. We are seeking pleasure. We desire pleasure. And so we talk about the world. We talk about the Christian. The Christian must be set apart, that is, sanctified or consecrated in the way that he or she seeks pleasure. And so tonight we're going to talk about being set apart in pleasure. In 1949, just in the hills of the World War II, George Orwell wrote 1984, which was a dystopian view of the world. It depicts a future of totalitarian control where the state, known as Big Brother, seeks to take control over every citizen, over their work life, over their private life, even over the thoughts which they have in their head. And people are told to work, where they'll work, who they'll work with, who they'll be with, and they're constantly threatened with, remember, Big Brother is watching you, right? Control is accomplished through fear and invasive spying. Punishment and consequences were severe, and it was all in order to keep order among the people. That's the whole gist of the book. I mean, I know there's a lot more about 1984, but that's the gist of the book, that in order to get an ordered society, Big Brother or the state must threaten everyone with punishment, maybe even the fear of death. Just 17 years prior to that, and before World War II, in 1932, Aldous Huxley wrote a book called Brave New World, which was also about a dystopian future, where control was the utmost goal of any society. That order was the utmost purpose of any society. The more order we had, the better the society was, the better people lived. And so they distinguished people among the castes, the alpha caste, the beta, gamma, delta, and epsilon caste. Alpha and beta were the intellectuals. They were bred basically in test tubes. A fertilized egg could be divided up to 96 times, and you would have 96 clones that would come out. And through conditioning, they would make sure that those alpha caste people would desire intellectualism so that they never felt out of place. At the same time, and through some Pavlovian, you know what I'm saying? Pavlov. What is it? Pavlovian. I was forgetting the second V. Pavlovian responses. They were training the epsilon caste, which were the lowest form of the workers, to desire to do their work and be afraid of such things as natural beauty and desire to learn more or to read. All of those things were negative ideas to them, and so they were very content and orderly to serve in their positions, and everyone in the caste in between. Of course, in both stories, there is that one oddball who begins to go against the society. But the whole point of Huxley's Brave New World, the way they got orderliness was through pleasure. They had a drug called soma that was given to the masses, and the soma drug was to get rid of negative thoughts and allow them to feel pleasure and happiness. They didn't have sexual relations with one person, monogamy. That was a dirty word to them. They were encouraged to have promiscuity because it was all about pleasure and seeking pleasure, and that kept the masses under control. Now, which vision do you think more closely represents our modern culture today? The big brother fear of death, or do whatever you want to do that makes you feel good? We see both in a lot of ways, but the big thing that we encounter, most people encounter, is pleasure seeking. You go and do what your heart desires, right? Anything your heart desires. That's what we want you to do. If it feels good, do it. That is a philosophy we often refer to as hedonism. Hedonism is just do whatever feels good to you. And if we can do that, then we're good. So we understand that pleasure is there. And in fact, if we take America as a culture, there is a quest for pleasure. Entertainment is king. Think about who are the most recognizable figures in the United States. Basically, I think two. What is it? Okay, entertainers, sports, which I would put into entertainers as well, and newscasters, entertainment personalities, and politics. I think those two are probably entertainment more than politics. And of course, every once in a while, entertainers are called upon to give their opinions about politics, and the two collide, and we're supposed to listen because why? Because they're famous. They don't have any more education maybe than we do. They don't have any more facts than what we have. They're seeing the same video clips. They're reading the same headlines. But they're not knocking on my door asking me what I think because I'm not famous. Celebrities are the most recognizable people in our culture. And that says something about entertainment, doesn't it? You throw my picture on the news, and it's probably because I got in trouble, right? And the people that recognize me are people in my sphere of influence. I mean, not you throw it up on Abilene News, maybe a couple hundred people in Abilene would recognize me. It's not even all of Abilene. But you throw I don't know, Taylor Swift on the news, and 99% of Abilene would recognize her in a heartbeat. And it would go much further than Abilene, right? It would go everywhere. Because as far as entertainment goes, even if we don't listen to her music, we're aware of her cultural impact, because entertainment is king. Entertainment, we might say, if we were going to put a definition on it, we might say it's an outlet for relieving stress. That's what some people say. It's an outlet for relieving stress or offering an escape, right? Don't you love that one? My life is so bad at the end of the day, I need the escape to go to some other world or some other realm. It's the idea of bringing enjoyment. I want to enjoy life. I want to enjoy things, and so entertainment brings me that. Some of us also suggested that entertainment precipitates social connection, right? 15 years ago, after a television show came on at night, we would gather around the water cooler and we'd say, "Hey, did you catch the show last night? Can you believe? I was shocked when..." And it becomes a social connection. Or we talk about movies that we've seen or music that we listen to. We connect with other people who have similar tastes and desires for the entertainment that we may consume. And so it precipitates social connection. It also precipitates a cultural reflection. That's what they say, that entertainment reflects culture. And it does, but at the same time, what else does entertainment do to culture? It shapes culture. It doesn't just reflect culture, it shapes culture. It sets us on certain paths, and it makes things that maybe one time were anathema to us as a culture, or we shunned them as a culture, and now it's normalizing them. What was abnormal has now become normal in a lot of ways. And that was not just a reflection of culture, it was a shaping of culture. It also brings economic growth, right? We shell out money to watch the movies. They pay the actors, pay the studios, they make more movies, and we go and watch other movies. And it's a cycle that continues to generate revenue. Of course, we get the revenue from where we work and things like that. So we are a culture that is on a quest for pleasure. We are pleasure-seeking people. We talk more about the entertainment we consumed or the pleasure that we have engaged in than we do about what we did at work today. When we talk with our friends, when we talk with our family, we will talk more about what we've seen, what we've done, where we have gone, what we've eaten, those things that are pleasurable to us. We talk more about those than what we did at the drudgery of work, because everybody's working for the weekend, right? So that's the quest of entertainment. I think the evolution of entertainment seeks to cater to the individual, and it's working. Calvin Miller wrote in 1998, he wrote a book called The Unchained Soul. He said, "We are the well-fed, the secure," talking about Americans. "We are lovers of the large plate and the broad sofa," right? We used to go buy paper plates, and they were the 8 1/4 inch paper plates, and now you can't hardly. That's considered a bread plate. And you go get the paper plates. This is my china. You go get the paper plates today, and they start at like 9 1/4 inches, but most people buy the 10-inch plate. And then you can go get those Chinette ones that are real heavy duty, that are oblong. They're like 12 inches wide. And, we want the big plates, right? I remember as a young man talking about, when we went out, I always went for quantity over quality. That was my idea, because I was going to eat a lot. That's just the way it was. We looked for the all-you-can-eat places, right? Taco Casa in Durant, Oklahoma on Tuesday nights used to have all you could eat. You just keep going back, pitch till you win. And then Nafy's Fin and Feather out by the Lake Texoma, they had all-you-could-eat steak. And that was dangerous. I'm sure someone went in there and got that, and it didn't bother the restaurant. Not me. I went in there to make up for everyone else's losses. The large plates, the broad sofa, material abundance keeps us from seeking any other kind of abundance. When we talked about this last week in materialism, when we have accumulated the things that we want, the things that we desire, and we have a lot of them and everything's just right, we are not seeking abundance in a spiritual realm. Look what we've got. And of course, look what we've got, and then we're only satisfied with it until we tear off the cellophane wrapper. And then immediately we want something else. We want something more. Miller continues, he says, our love of convenience trains us to believe that we can have as much as we want of whatever we want whenever we want it. For no matter what life gives us, we always want more. Our craving for things never sleeps long enough to allow us peace. We're never at peace with what we have, never content with what we have. We want more. But I like this statement. He says, in this part, he says, we want however much we want of whatever we want, whenever we want it, and we never have this time for peace. He goes on to say, we are the walking wantons. We just consume and consume and consume. Entertainment is personally tailored to each of us. And how do we see that accomplished today, or what do we see that in most today? How entertainment is tailored to us. Algorithms. We scroll through Facebook or Instagram or other social medias, and it shows us what we like to see, right?
Well, a lot of the trends now, I don't know exactly if they answer your question, but a lot of the trends now are for like high dopamine hits in short time. So you run out, and then you're like left with this desire, and you need to feel it over and over and over and over again.
Absolutely. And that's exactly how addiction starts or is formed, and it's the brain chemicals. We're not even talking about cocaine, methamphetamines, and chemicals that we introduce from outside the body. We're talking about the chemicals in our bodies, and the dopamine receptors, and we flood them with dopamine, and those receptors, after a while, they're like, oh, that's too much, and so they start to shut down, and now we've got to have more of what we had to receive the same amount of effect of the dopamine, and so we consume more and we consume more, and this algorithms. Do any of y'all have game apps on your phone, or the death scroll? How many of us have streaming television? We have streaming services, so we can watch what I want, when I want, and how much of it I want to watch. Right? Until I'm caught up with current time and I have to wait another week for a new episode. How depressing is that, right? We consume entertainment. So, what about God and pleasure? How does God feel about pleasure and seeking entertainment and things like that in our lives today? First of all, let me tell you, this lesson is not about Christian asceticism. Asceticism is a philosophy that says we have got to hold ourselves back from any kind of joy and happiness. Any of y'all read the old Little House on the Prairie books? She talks about one time going to church on Sundays and how they had to sit in the pews, and even though her feet didn't reach the floor, she was not allowed to swing her feet. They weren't allowed to smile on Sundays. See, that shows joy. That shows entertainment. And God, of course, as we all know, is against entertainment. Or is He? God is not against entertainment. Everything created by God is good, and nothing is to be rejected if it is received with thanksgiving, for it is made holy by the word of God and prayer. God has made everything good. You enjoy a good plate of spaghetti? Hey, God created that. Do you enjoy the theater? God created that. He created the minds that could write and the actors with talents. You like to take a stroll in nature and do bird watching? What bird did God not create? What plant was not His? What rock exists without God? God, everything good is created by God. We read in James chapter 1, every good gift and every perfect gift is from above, coming down from the Father of lights. This is more about the nature of God, in whom there is no variation or shadow due to change. God is the same. He's consistent with us, and He consistently gives us good things. God never treats, get this, physical or earthly pleasures as intrinsically bad or evil, especially in deference to spiritual pleasures. See, some people say, well, we can only have spiritual pleasures. We can only take pleasure in those things, and those are the only good or legitimate ways that we can be enjoyed or entertained or find enjoyment or entertainment is only through the spiritual pursuits. God never said that. God never said that. He never said you must seek spiritual enjoyment and no physical enjoyment, no physical pleasure. That's a human-devised development that came up, during the Middle Ages. Actually, even before then, Augustine was famous for once I don't remember if his wife divorced him and his wife died, but he was single, and he said, now we must be celibate, to the point when he began to advocate emasculation. So we'll never be happy again. That's human. That's not God. That's not God at all. God created pleasure. And look at just some of the categories of pleasure that God created for us. I think an easy one is nature. Why are there so many different flowers of various colors? Why are there oak trees, pine trees? We might legitimately ask, why did He make mesquite? But we may not do that. Why? Why the variety of the world? God created nature. Psalm 8, Psalm 19, Psalm 29, Psalm 104, 108, 48. Those we often refer to as the nature psalms, because they proclaim the greatness of nature itself. Even Solomon in Ecclesiastes, he says something. He says, light is sweet and it is pleasant for the eyes to see the sun. In other words, we can take, do you ever, maybe after several days of rain and overcast, and you're kind of feeling that you're stuck in the house, it's cold, and you don't have to go to work, and you kind of curl up in the blanket and everything, and then you finally get to go out and see the sun? Right? It's a pleasure to see the sun again. Nature is one of the things God created that brings us pleasures. Human artistry. For example, in Exodus chapter 31, beginning of verse 3, he's talking about Aholiab and how he's chosen him, Bezalel and Aholiab, and he's chosen those men to craft the utensils and the items that are going to be used in the tabernacle. God says, I have filled him with the Spirit of God, with ability and intelligence, with knowledge and all craftsmanship, to devise artistic designs, to work in gold, silver, and bronze, in cutting stones for setting, and in carving wood, to work in every craft. I mentioned a moment ago that God gives writers the ability to write, actors the ability to write. He gives craftsmen the ability to craft, to work in gold, silver, bronze, whatever the medium might be. He gives them ability and intelligence and knowledge. Artistic design just to make something look pretty? Yeah, because we enjoy that. It's pleasurable for us to see those things, and God created it. Sticking with Ecclesiastes, the preacher sought to find words of delight, and uprightly he wrote words of truth. What was he writing? Words of delight. Not just the words of God, but words of delight. Words that bring joy and happiness. And so we find joy and pleasure in human artistry. We find it in our families, right? How many of us have children or brothers or sisters or moms and dads, and we take joy just in being in their pleasure, just sharing time with them. We find, for example, in Psalm 128 or 127, behold, children are a heritage from the Lord. The fruit of the womb is a reward. Blessed is the man who fills his quiver with them. What is it? He's talking about children. In the very next Psalm, Psalm 128, talks about grandchildren. And what a blessing they are. We love our families. We're coming up on a holiday season, right? And one of the things we look forward to is spending time with family at the holiday seasons, whether it's the Christmas or Thanksgiving, or maybe you get to spend time with your family around Halloween or maybe around Easter. I know some families live close enough, they have Sunday dinners. Every Sunday after worship services, they go home and they've got roast in the oven. They pull it out and they all sit down and they eat together. I've got my family in Oklahoma City. They often get together for Sunday dinner. I don't get to go because I'm here. I'm 4 hours away. I don't get to go. And it's always made me a little bit jealous that I don't get to go and share in that dinner with my family, because family brings joy to us. One of God's great pleasures, romance and sex. We're all adults here, so we're going to use adult language. Proverbs 5, we're not going to do all of Song of Solomon, but we'll shorten it down to Proverbs 5, 18 and 19. Let your fountain be blessed, and rejoice in the wife of your youth, a lovely deer, a graceful doe. Let her breast fill you at all times with delight. Be intoxicated always with her love. That's God saying, take pleasure in your spouse. Spend time with them. Let that be the kind of person you are, that you find joy in your wife or in your husband. And yes, and notice, he's not even talking about reproduction here. Some people, God only wants us to have sex to reproduce. No, he doesn't. He wants you to have sex. He wants you to have great joy every time you do. Because God created it that way. Social life, friends. Psalm 133, verse 1. Behold how good and pleasant it is when brothers dwell in unity. We have a social life. We've got friends. Maybe you go play golf with some buddies, or maybe I remember when I was working with the church in Corsicana, Texas. They had a quilting bee. And it was a group of about 8 to 15 ladies that would come, and they took over a classroom, and they'd set up 2 big quilts in that room, and they would sit around each one of those quilts, and they would just quilt all day long. They'd come back the next day and they'd quilt. They'd leave these quilts set up for a week. They'd come in every day for a week, and they would quilt on one another's quilts, and they would talk, and they would have social time together. I don't know what your social activities are, but he's told us, have a social life. John chapter 2, where does Jesus go? He goes to a wedding feast in Cana of Galilee, right? What's a wedding feast? It's a party. and Jesus goes and shows that God ordains pleasure that we can have in parties. Even look at Isaiah 25, when God is looking forward to a time when the nation would be restored, and the people would be his people, and I think he's really looking at the church. On this mountain the Lord of hosts will make for all people a feast of rich food, a feast of well-aged wine, of rich food full of marrow, and aged wine well refined. In other words, God throws a party. He says, look, I'm looking forward to a time that I'm throwing you a party, and you'll come and you'll enjoy it and feast with me. Social life. And then, of course, worship. God wants us to enjoy worship. Psalm 122 this time instead of 133. I was glad when they said to me, let us go to the house of the Lord. He was glad whenever they were going to worship. Or in Psalm 84, beginning in verse 10, for a day in your courts is better than 1,000 elsewhere. I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than dwell in tents of wickedness. For the Lord God is a sun and a shield. The Lord bestows favor and honor. No good thing does he withhold from those who walk uprightly. O Lord of hosts, blessed is the one who trusts in you. No good thing does he withhold when we worship him. And so this would be, I think, the individual worship when we're at home, when we're praying, or maybe we're singing praise, or maybe we're just in meditation and thought about the glories of God. That's worship. And maybe we're talking about the corporate worship. Glad when they said to me, come, let us go to the house of the Lord. Let us go together and worship our God. And so when we're here studying in the Bible, or we're worshiping and praising God, this is joy to the soul. God filled the world with pleasure and invites us to enjoy it. John Piper refers to it as Christian hedonism, Christian pleasure. He talks about how God is a hedonist. God is a hedonist. God takes pleasure, but he takes pleasure in pouring delight on all his creation, especially in bestowing pleasure on his people. In other words, when you enjoy these categories of pleasure, when we embrace all of them, each time we do it, God is happy, right? How many of you have ever watched children opening Christmas presents on a Christmas morning? Yeah, we watch it, and we're not even worried about the gifts with our names on it. We want to watch our children light up with joy. Every day, God surrounds us with things that bring us pleasure. And when we take hold of them, God wants to see us light up. God takes pleasure in watching us light up. That should be our attitude toward pleasure. But there are perversions of pleasure, right? And here's where we find conflict, often between the world and the Christian. C.S. Lewis writes the Screw Tape Letters. And I don't know if you're familiar with the book, but Screw Tape is a high-level demon, and he has a nephew, Wormwood, who is a low-level demon. And the low-level demon, Wormwood, is out in the field, and he's trying to tempt people to draw them away from God and pull them into a life of sin. And he's not very good at his job. And so he's writing back to Uncle Screw Tape. Screw Tape writes him back letters to encourage him and give him more ideas on how to get people to take their eyes off the prize. That's the gist of it. And so each chapter is just this exchange between Screw Tape and Wormwood. Screw Tape says, never forget that when we are dealing with any pleasure in its healthy and normal and satisfying form, we are, in the sense, on the enemy's ground. Now remember, he's from the devil, and so the enemy is who? God. When we're dealing in any kind of pleasure, that's God's realm. Right? So we got to be careful in how we use pleasure. That's what he's telling Wormwood. He says, I know we have won many a soul through pleasure. All the same, it is his invention, not ours. He made the pleasures. All our research so far has not enabled us to produce one. The devil does not produce pleasure. God produced all pleasure. Every good gift and every perfect gift comes from who? From God, not the devil. So what do we have to do? What can we do? How do we get someone a soul through pleasure if we can't produce it and God does? It says all we can do is encourage the human to take the pleasures which our enemy has produced, God has produced at times, or in ways, or in degrees, which God, the enemy, has forbidden. Hence, we always try to work away from the natural condition of any pleasure to that in which it is at least natural, least redolent of its maker, and least pleasurable. We're working against the natural condition, against what God intended, toward what an ever-increasing craving for an ever-diminishing pleasure is the formula. Get them to want pleasure and want more and more and more and more of it, while there is an ever-diminishing return on the pleasure. Flood the dopamine receptors, dull them to the chemical, and then they'll have to do more and more, an inordinate amount. Later, he says, he, talking about the enemy, God has filled his world full of pleasures. There are things for humans to do all day long without his minding in the least. We do it all. We engage in that pleasure all we want. God doesn't mind it in the least. Everything has to be twisted before it's any use to us. How does the devil twist or pervert pleasure? One way is that we forget pleasure is from God and we leave him out. We leave him out of the pleasure. We think, well, this is for me, this is what I do. We try to have pleasure apart from God and instead of sharing our pleasure with God. Why might we leave God out of our pleasure? What's the reason we might do that? We might be embarrassed with what we're doing, right? For example, social life is good. To be with friends and enjoy time together, wonderful. Do it at a strip club, not good, right? Still getting the social life, but doing it with things that are not for us, right? And so we wouldn't invite God into that type of situation. That's an extreme example, we might say, but we get the picture, right? There are some things that we might be embarrassed to invite into our pleasure, and embarrassed to invite God into our pleasure. And so we want to make sure that we are seeking pleasure, but we're seeking it with God. I had a friend years ago. He's an agnostic, but he said, if I believed in God, or if God is real, I would like God to be one who would go kayaking with me. And I remember at the time being very bothered by that statement. You wouldn't just go kayaking with God, but I understand now what he's wanting. He wants this. He wants to share what he enjoys, his pleasure. If there is a God, he wants to share it with God, and that's the way we ought to be. We sometimes forget that pleasure is from God and we leave him out. Another way that we can twist pleasure around to pervert it, as Screw Tape tells Wormwood, is we make pleasure seeking the goal. It's all about the pleasure seeking. It's not about seeing that the world is full of pleasure and we simply receive that with gratitude, but rather, instead of seeking God, we're seeking the pleasure. We seek the good times. That's what we want more than anything else. And it becomes our purpose in life. Solomon fell into this trap. That's what Ecclesiastes 2 that we're reading about a moment ago, that was the trap. He sought wisdom and knowledge and laughter and wine and projects and wealth and sex and entertainment and fame. And then he concludes, and whatever my eyes desired, I did not keep from them. I kept my heart from no pleasure, for my heart found pleasure in all my toil, and this was my reward for all my toil. That was it. Everything that I did, this was my pleasure. That was my reward. Do you remember when Jesus says some of them go, they do their praying on the street corners so that everyone would see them, right? Matthew chapter 6. And do you remember he said, they have their reward. In other words, they have all the good they're going to get and the applause of men. When they give, they sound the trumpet, they have their reward. Solomon says, I sought pleasure. And when I got it, I realized that's all it's going to give me, is that pleasure for a moment. Then I considered all that my hands had done and the toil I had expended in doing it. And behold, it was vanity, a striving after the wind. And there was nothing to be gained under the sun. It brought no spiritual profit to me to grab the wind, right? It's like, how do you hold a moonbeam in your hand? How do you hold wind in your hand? We can twist pleasure, when we consider pleasure, our right and our entitlement. We expect instant gratification because I deserve that pleasure. And we have the wrong attitude toward the pleasure. And final one that we'll look at is that we overindulge in good things and neglect others. Right? So, movies. All right, yeah, I'd like to go to a good movie now and then. But if I'm watching movies dusk to dawn, sleeping all day, and watching movies again dusk till dawn, or maybe it's not movies, maybe it's video games. We're playing, I don't know, Call of Duty or Metal Gear, Metrics, I don't know. And we play all day long. We lose track of time, and all of a sudden it's 4:30 in the morning. We got to go to bed because we got to go to work at 8, and we're tired, and we can't do the things that we need to do. Valerie?
It seems weird, but Pinterest is one of the hardest things for me. Once I first got on it, I had a hard time getting off of it. It was just like pleasure, one pleasure after another, seeing different things
Yeah.
that I wanted to do, and so I had to kind of stay away from Pinterest.
Yeah. And there may be some legitimate reason you're looking to do a center table or a centerpiece for a table craft type deal. And so you go to Pinterest and you're looking up ideas, and that's good, right? There's nothing wrong with that. But 5 hours of doom scrolling later of Pinterest, and you've neglected a lot of things, right? Now, how much time is too much time? I don't know that. I don't know what you're neglecting. But the simple fact is we overindulge in things, we neglect other things. Namely, ministry to others, right? Other people need us. And it's very easy to, get on Facebook or Instagram and watch cat videos. That's what I do. I like the cat videos. I like cats. And when I really like one, you know what I do? I share it with Julie. Because you know what Julie likes? Cat videos. But the algorithms come around, and now they show Julie the same videos that they show me. And I send her one, I've already seen it. Or she sends me, I saw that one. Right? 10 minutes becomes 20 minutes. 20 minutes becomes an hour. An hour becomes an hour and a half. And it's not just digital. We can be doing this on things that have nothing to do with computers and television, movies.
I love reading.
Yeah.
And I read a lot, mainly novels. But then again, I get to thinking, now, the time I spent reading those novels, I spent reading the Bible.
Yeah. And there's a balance there. Paul, I'm not telling you shouldn't read novels and only read the Bible. There's a balance there. But if we're putting, 9 hours a week into novels and we're putting, an hour into the Bible, maybe we should adjust that balance a little bit, And my reading of the Bible needs to translate into going out and ministering to people around me. See, 9 hours of reading the Bible sounds great, but if it doesn't equate into, an hour of visiting or an hour of reaching out or an hour of teaching, what's my 9 hours doing? Of even reading the Bible. See, overindulging in a good thing leaves other things neglected. Sean?
Like everything, money, games, whatever, all of it stems to the idea of what is the purpose? Like, why are you doing it? What's your
Mhm.
goal? Is it drawing you near to God? Is it not? I used to play a lot of video games. I still play video games, but I used to play a lot of video games.
Yeah.
And there was a specific game that I played for a lot, like years, and I stopped playing it. And the reason I stopped playing with it was because I would constantly look at the game and what I was doing and realize like nothing comes from it. Like if you like erase that game completely, what had I gained from all that time doing
Yeah.
that? The enjoyment while I played it, and there's something to that to
Yeah.
some degree.
Yeah.
But like you add up the time and time and time before you know it, you spend thousands, hundreds, of whatever.
Well, you know what the answer is?
From it, you don't have anything that you saved from it. And I'm not saying that of everything. But
No.
that's one thing that I think we need to be careful of is Satan is
Yeah.
smart, and he tries to get us interested in things that have no real benefit in any shape or form.
Keep them busy.
Exactly, keep them busy, and that's the reason I stopped. Is just
Yeah.
nothing.
Well, the answer to that, of course, is getting the casino slot games on your phone now that actually pay out money. So, there you actually have something to know. I'm only kidding. Only kidding.
You could think, okay, let's, and this is many people may not know this, but nowadays, most people between the age of, 10 and 30 probably spend thousands of hours a year playing
Oh, yeah.
video games, like literally
Yeah.
thousands of hours. And the games are designed to keep you doing medial tasks that don't,
Yep.
it's just time suck.
Mhm.
And if you think about that and you say, well, what if I just stopped half of the time in that game, thousands of hours, right?
Yeah.
And started reading the Bible in that time. Or, like you said, go out and try to help someone at a food shelter.
Or half of it. I mean, listen, it's not wrong to play a video game. If you enjoy it, knock yourself out. Just don't overindulge so that you neglect important things of life itself. Dangers of hedonism, and we'll go through these really quickly. And this kind of hits on the one we were just talking about. Priorities are inverted. What is most important often becomes a back burner idea. It also diminishes the enjoyment of the good pleasures of God. If I'm only taking enjoyment in things that have no spiritual impact, it diminishes my joy of accomplishing, right? We're nearing the end of the year. Maybe you're doing a read the Bible in a year. You're ending near the end of the year. And man, on that last day, the sense of accomplishment we'll feel when we get through that, right? Yeah, it's wonderful. But if I neglect that reading, and for other joys that have no spiritual pursuit, then it diminishes my enjoyment from the pleasures of God. One of the things about seeking pleasure is it seeks to avoid pain. Pain is a gift to you from God for your growth and your maturity. It's a blessing. And if we're trying to avoid that pain, we're avoiding those blessings which God has given to us. It causes us to retreat from ministry to others, and it distracts us from our spiritual needs. We have spiritual needs, and if we're always just seeking pleasure, we're not addressing or even meditating upon my spiritual needs. As we meditate on spiritual needs, we find joy in those spiritual accomplishments which God works through us. And so the chief end of mankind, I'll leave you with this, is to glorify God by enjoying Him forever. That's eternity. That's what we're looking forward to. So that's God's desire to be glorified, and your desire or my desire to be satisfied. They're one and the same. God wants to satisfy us with the pleasures and the joys of this world. That's unlike the world. And so when we start enjoying pleasure with God and through God, our lives will look different than the world. All right, I appreciate the discussion on tonight, and y'all are free to go.